Hey, it's Kim Commando Today, your daily podcast to keep you up to date with all things digital and beyond. And I'd love to have you be a part of our podcast. You can make an appointment to speak with me. Just head over to commando.com, and on the top right, there's a button that says Email Kim. Fill that out, and that's it. Okay, my next guest, my gosh, I am so excited to have him here. George Noory. He is the legendary host of Coast to Coast AM. I mean, this show has been exploring the mysteries of the universe for decades, everything from UFOs to life after life to the paranormal. And he has been covering these unidentified aerial phenomena, otherwise known as UAPs, long time before they even became a headline. Now, just last month, Congress heard a special hearing that they called the Unidentified Anomalous Phenomena, Exposing the Truth. And all kinds of experts and former military and government officials, they came to Washington. They were tackling subjects like the impossible flight patterns to claims about advanced alien tech that are monitoring all of our military bases. There was even talk about a secret government program that collects UFO data in the shadows. So I thought to myself, who better to break all this down than George Noory himself? First off, let me tell you, George, I'm a fan. I'm so excited that you're here. And you've been this guiding force on UFOs and the unexplained for many years. Let's start at the beginning.
Kim, this adventure into the unknown started when I was 11 years old. I very rarely took a day off from school, but this one day I had a fever and I stayed home. And I woke up. I was bouncing on the ceiling, looking down at my little body, going, "Wow, what is this? This is a trip." And at that moment, I rammed my body and my floating astral body together. And I told my mother, I said, "Mom, what happened to me?" She said, "You probably had an out-of-body experience. Go to the library and look for some books." And I did, and found one by two people named Hayward Carrington and Sylvan Muldoon called Projections of the Astral Body. And I looked at the picture, and the picture had an astral body floating above a physical body connected with a cord. And I said, "That's what happened to me." And I was obsessed with it. And then eventually, Mom brought me home a book by Walter Sullivan, the New York Times science writer, called We Are Not Alone, about ETs living in space. Look magazine came out with the Barney and Betty Hill abduction case. Wow. I was hooked. This grabbed me hook, line, and sinker.
And so at that age, what did your friends think? Did they think like, wow, something's wrong with George?
They thought George was a little imbalanced. But at that age, I decided to go into broadcasting.
Did you?
Mm-hmm. I was an 11-year-old kid talking about being a broadcaster. But I said to my mother, who was really into this, God loving, she's still with us. She's 95 years old.
Oh, God bless her.
But I said, "Mom, people will talk to a broadcaster. They won't talk to just George Noory if I picked up the phone. But if I was George Noory from some news outlet, they'd talk to me. And that's what I want to do." And I did that. And ironically, my first job was 19 years old as a copy boy at an ABC station in Detroit. But my first reporter's job, I was 21 years old, and my first interview was with a nuclear physicist named Stanton Friedman, who talked about UFOs all the time.
Oh, wow.
And then I went up to my news director and said, "I want to cover this," because he was speaking at night. Mm-hmm. And he said, "I'm not paying for this, George. You want to cover it on your own." So I did, interviewed him. We stayed friends. Ironically, he was my first interview ever, and I was his last when he passed away.
Is that right? Wow. Yeah. That's an incredible story. So you guys, did you maintain a friendship over the years then?
Yeah, we sure did. He was on Coast to Coast 100 times practically. And we had a live stage show in Columbus, Ohio. I do live shows on stage. And he was one of the guests. And on his way back home through Toronto's airport, he died of a heart attack.
Oh. Mm. You know, when we all hear about UFOs and now we have UAPs, right?
Yep.
There's always this sense of government cover-ups. Nobody wants to acknowledge that they exist. Do they really exist? How do you address that?
Well, I take the stance as a newsman from way gone back to try to balance my shows. The pros, the cons. I don't try to take sides. But you could tell the show is acclimated to believing that there's life out there in space, extraterrestrial. And these government hearings, which are important and necessary, aren't really accomplishing anything because they haven't admitted anything yet. They're still denying that they're alien technology, while people are testifying, government employees, that it's real. It's amazing.
As we head into the holidays, every dollar counts. From travel expenses to the never-ending names to cross off your gift list, we all could use some extra cash back in our pockets, and fast. Thankfully, there's Upside. The Upside app gives you opportunities to earn before filling up your gas tank, going out to eat, or just doing the grocery shopping. Top earners on Upside are getting as much as $300 cash back every single month. There are over 100,000 gas stations, grocery stores, and restaurants on the Upside app, ensuring that cash back is always just around the corner. It's easy to use everywhere I go. And yes, it's real cash back. No confusing rewards, points, or credits, just actual money you can transfer straight to your bank account. Download the free Upside app and use promo code Kim to get an extra 25 cents back for every gallon on your first tank of gas. That's an extra 25 cents back using promo code Kim. Just download the Upside app and use promo code Kim. So why do you think the government's pushing down this intel? And maybe there are even like some secret government programs that are collecting UFO data in the shadows.
There has always been talk that they're afraid that they can't handle the population. You can't handle the truth. When something like that happens, and they think people will be out of control, or we want free energy, or who knows what. But they've kept it secret, maybe for defense purposes as well. I think the Russians have done the same thing, and so have many other nations. They're afraid to let us know what's going on. I think they think there's going to be panic and they can't control us.
Meanwhile, they let everybody just sit on TikTok for 19 hours a day.
Incredible stories.
So what do you think is the biggest, clearest example of a bona fide UFO sighting?
There are many, but I'm going to cite one story that was told to us by the late Dr. J. Allen Hynek, who ran the Project Blue Book for the Air Force, which investigated UFOs. He started off as a non-believer. He called it swamp gas. By the end of his career, he was a believer that we're being visited from extraterrestrials out there in space. But he cited a case of Lonnie Zamora, a police officer in Socorro, New Mexico, who was driving his police cruiser down the highway and saw what he thought was a crashed white car on the side of the road with two occupants scurrying around the vehicle. Mm-hmm. As he got closer, he realized that's not a car. That's a spaceship. And those two people running around the spaceship are ETs. They got in the spaceship, they saw him, and they took off. Now, that's a police officer who's not lying. But that one story convinced Dr. J. Allen Hynek, who was a skeptic at the time, to become a believer, and he never looked back.
Have you ever seen one?
Yes, I have. So I do these live stage shows, as I mentioned, and there was a guy named Ed who would show up at all these events, sitting behind me and my producer, Tom Danheiser. Every event, I'd see him sitting with a brown paper bag, sitting behind me. And Kim, after about 3 or 4 times, you see the same guy sitting there with a brown paper bag, sitting behind you. You begin to worry a little bit that something's a little wrong here, right?
Yeah, something's off. Something's wrong.
And then so as on the 4th time, he reaches into the bag. And I say to Tom, oh, my God, here we go. Get ready. The guy pulls out night vision goggles. And he comes up to me and says, George, I want to take you to the top of the roof. And I said, no, thank you. And he said, no, I got a group of people up there, and we are going to be looking at UFOs. Come on with us. We see them with these night vision goggles. So I went up there, and I saw two of them doing 90-degree turns, starting and stopping hundreds of miles up in the air. It was amazing. What were they? I don't know, but they weren't insects, that's for sure.
Do you think it could have been some type of military event? Our military doing something?
No, we don't have those kinds of devices, Kim. We can't stop in midair and turn around back. These were truly bona fide extraterrestrial from another planetary system.
Well, I got to tell you, George, I believe we there's no way we can just be the only civilization in this entire galaxy where we live. I've always believed that if you look at what we have and the technology that we're using now, it's inferior, I'm sure, to what other civilizations might be using. When we start talking about technology, what do you think is like the most surprising and mind-blowing piece of alien tech that anyone has claimed that exists?
The fact that they're here. They've learned how to bend space and time. They're not traveling conventionally. We could not do it. It would take us millions of years to get from point A to point B. What they've learned is they've learned how to bend point A and point B and let them touch together in an instant. Just imagine a piece of paper.
Okay.
On one end, you have an X. On another end, you have an X. And in between is space, millions and millions of miles. You can't get there conventionally. But fold them over so the two X's hit. Then you have something. And that's what they've learned. They've learned how to bend space and time and how to travel through the universe. And once we get that technology, we can do the same thing.
How come we don't have that type of technology yet?
Oh, it's probably thousands and thousands of years away. Elon Musk thinks he has it, but we don't.
Do you think we're getting closer to it with artificial intelligence?
Not really. It's going to take a long time. I mean, it's going to take an ET group to come here and literally give us the technology. Have they done that already? Well, that's anybody's guess. Some people think they have.
So, in hosting the show for so many years, George, and I'm a fan. I have listened, although I have to admit I sleep a lot of times at night. Okay, have you noticed the public perception of UFOs? How has it changed over the years? Do you think people are more receptive to it now?
Well, there's no question. I think people have grown to understand and appreciate the fact that there's extraterrestrial life out there. And I think if you were to poll people 20 years ago and compare that poll to today, you would find the numbers have increased dramatically nowadays, that people believe that we are not alone in the universe.
You mentioned the hearings that are happening in Washington, where we have the testimonies from the experts and former military officials and government officials. And what exactly are they talking about?
They're trying to show face, I believe, and let the public think that they're concerned about their concern.
Okay.
I don't know if they're getting to it because they keep denying that they have any technology when the experts are saying that we do. But I think the hearings were set up primarily to show the public we care. We're legislators. You elected us. We're going to get to the answers. But they haven't done that yet.
Have they released anything that has shocked you?
The shocking has been the denial of these experts who they have summoned to testify. That's what's shocking to me. It's like they're not even listening to them.
Give me an example.
Well, there was a fellow by the name of David Grush who talked about the fact that he knew that there were biologicals involved, biological extraterrestrials. That's a huge story. I'd have medical professions talking to him. What do you mean? What do they look like? How do they live? And none of that happens.
Why not? Because is it like what you said before, that they're afraid that Americans are going to freak out, panic?
they'd have to tell us why they have denied it for so many years, and they don't have an answer for that. I would simply say, look, we didn't think you could handle it 25 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago. We think you can now. This is what's happening.
And I'm sure there are people that are listening right now and say, oh, you know what, George, you don't know what you're talking about. Kim, why are you even believing any of this? Are there any pieces of evidence that you can say, like, this is really serious consideration for us?
Well, we talk about the 1947 crash at Roswell, New Mexico. Mm-hmm. That was physical evidence at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio, and that we have debris and dead aliens. What more do you want?
Yeah.
There was another story that former President Richard Nixon took comedian Jackie Gleason to Homestead Air Force Base in Florida and showed him bodies of extraterrestrials. Gleason was just obsessed with ETs. And Nixon, who was a friend of his, said, I'm going to show you something. And he did. And it's a story that Gleason's wife repeats all the time.
Describe for us what these ETs actually look like. I mean, like if we were to, we mentioned that, you've mentioned that they were, passed away and dead, I don't want to say bodies, I guess you'd say bodies. Are they big? Are they small? For the uninitiated.
They're all types, Kim. Some look like we have always heard, the alien grays, the big head, the big brown eyes, big black eyes, gray bodies, skinny little arms and fingers, things that you would see on Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Mm-hmm. Then there's that looks like human beings. They look like us. Then there's reptilians. So there's all kinds of things out there in the universe, all kinds.
Why don't we see more of them?
That's a good question. They don't make themselves that public. I don't know why. Maybe they have agreements with governments. Who knows? But it sure would make it easy for all of us, wouldn't it, if they just came down and plopped down on the White House lawn and said, here we are.
And look at what we have. Okay. And what you all don't. It's interesting to me that, that we do have some of these research reports, and we have the facts, and that there's a whole segment of society that says, if there is something in the sky, like it was the Phoenix lights, right, years ago, and I'm in Phoenix, and I saw those lights, and the military, it was all military planes, and goes on from there, and it does kind of feel like a cover-up, doesn't it?
Yeah, they said it was the military planes. This happened in 1997. Hundreds and hundreds of people witnessed these objects flying all over the place. They weren't military craft, that's for sure. But one day we'll get the answers, Kim. One day.
So, if the aliens are watching us right now, what would you think that they would say about all of us looking down on our smartphones 24/7?
They would probably say, we did this 100 years ago, and they're doing the same thing. But I think the biggest thing that they would cite is how insightful we are with war. It's a planet that has never stopped warring and killing since its inception. And I think that baffles them. I think they're intrigued by it.
It does seem strange that we have different countries with nuclear warheads pointed at each other, for sure.
That could annihilate each other in an instant. You're right.
And it's, it's frightening. And, we've got this strange guy in, North Korea with a weird haircut, just going like, what? And Dennis Rodman. I mean, it's just so many things that you sit back and you go like, wow. I mean, where is this even coming from? I mean, how is this even happening? But I think aside from war, what else would you say?
Well, we are a believer in God, which I think the ETs are too. I got to be honest, I don't know what God is, but I think there is a higher power out there, and it's there, and hopefully one day we'll find out exactly what it is.
I've always found it fascinating about how our bodies work. All the little pieces that come together to create the way that we see and the way that we hear. Our heart, our organs, the fact that we have an opposing thumb and we can pick up things. I'm a firm believer that there is a God, which leads us into life after life. What do you think of that?
I think the marvels of the complexity of life happens to be unbelievable. And you're right. We have two eyes to see. We have ears to hear. We have a mouth to talk. We have a mouth to eat. We have hands to get things done. I mean, the design is brilliant. This doesn't happen by accident.
Right. And the intricacies of going back to your eyes, because I had a cornea transplant last May, and so I have deep knowledge of how your eyes operate. And it is just fascinating to me about how the optic nerve gets that signal into the brain. How we have feet to stand even. And there has to be some being, and it's my hope that when I close my eyes for the last time, that's not the end of everything.
Well, let's hope not. And you're right about the eyes. It's a magnificent piece of machinery in the human body. Look at someone like Elton John, who has just said he's gone blind.
Yeah, that's sad.
Very, very sad with a talent like that. But the complexity of the human body is magnificent. It truly is.
So what do you think happens when we die?
I think there's an afterlife. I think we move on to another plane of existence. We probably reincarnate, but there's another plane that's out there, and it happens. I mean, I'm in no rush to get there to find out. But when I do, I'll come back and let you know.
I would love that, because I always feel like it would be such a shame that you go through all of life's joys and traumas and dramas, and you accumulate all this knowledge and goodness, hopefully, right? And able to inspire people. And then at the end, it's like, okay, that's all. I just feels, for me, that just feels like that would be cruel. That would just be so sad.
Oh, remember that song, Is That All There Is?
Yeah, that's true. Is that all there is?
I think there's nothing in that.
So just a few last questions. I know you're really super busy, and I don't want to take up all of your time. When you approach or you have various guests on your show, have you ever been asked to testify in front of Congress?
I have not. I would if I were asked, but I have not been asked.
I wonder why that is.
Well, I'm more of a facilitator, Kim. I'm not the person who investigated the UFO. I'm the guy who told the world about the UFO, and there's a difference.
Yeah, that is true. That is true. So, how many stations are you on?
640 in Canada and the United States.
Wow, that's awesome. That is amazing. I'm not there yet, George. I'm not there yet. I'm only on 510. So
you're the digital queen. You'll get there.
I'm trying. It's, I personally, I'm frightened of artificial intelligence. How about you?
If it's done the wrong way, it could be a disaster. If it's done the right way, it could be a benefit to mankind. Now, if you ask me which way are we going to go, I don't have an answer for that. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know if I don't have an answer either, but I'm afraid that if it gets put into the wrong hands and, AI can answer its own questions, the iteration that we have right now is in its infancy. And it's doing marvelous things for medicine, for example, and obviously for education. And I know that I use it, 3 or 4 times a day to help me get my tasks done. But for me, it's a little frightening to see just how the different iterations are and who's programming it and the answers that sometimes it spits out. Like I was using Google Gemini, George, and I had asked for the Bible verse that's in the Christmas Charlie Brown special. And Gemini came back and said, I'm not allowed to give you a Bible verse because that's controversial material. I'm like,
gee.
I'm like, really? Okay. So then I pressed it and said, how come you find a Bible verse controversial that was in the Charlie Brown Christmas special? And it came back and said, oh, I didn't mean to say that. The Bible's a copywritten work, so you're not allowed to use that. I'm like, Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Who's going to see you?
Yes. Okay. Come on down. Whoever wrote Moses, come on down. Come on down. Okay. Well, George, thank you for spending some time with us.
Thank you, Kim. I've admired your work for years, and it's great to talk to you.
And if I ever can help you with anything digital, I'm your gal.
You got it.
Okay. Thank you, George.
Thank you.
So, folks, if you're up late at night and you need something really great to listen to, just turn on your local radio. George is on every single radio station, I think, in the United States. And I think he's on every single radio station across the United States. Again, that's Coast to Coast with George Noory. Yes, George, again, thank you so much for being here.
This program is a copyrighted production of Westar Multimedia Entertainment and protected by the copyright laws. Any rebroadcast or use of this program for commercial, business, economic, or financial purposes without the written permission of Westar Multimedia Entertainment is strictly prohibited.